everyone, and welcome back to Two Show Day. My name is Diana Shabai Booker, and I'm your host. We're coming to you this week with a little post-Valentine's Day love special. We always talk about shows that we love, but I have a person on this week that I especially love. But first I want to talk about a couple of shows that I saw or am involved in that I love, and just give them a quick little shout out. So first is they're both Capital Region productions. The first is the Black Theater Troupe of Upstate New York's production of Once on This Island. I saw it last week, and I just cannot get enough of, first of all, it's their first musical, and it's a giant musical. There's like 25 people in it, and it was done so beautifully. The costume design is incredible. The voices on that stage are wonderful. I thought the set design was really cool too, and utilitarian, and just done so well. But truly what I can't get over was the diverse cross-section of the audience. Like, I could not pick out one majority of any kind of people in that audience. There were Black people, white people, old people, young people, men, women, everybody. Like, I'm not sure I've ever been in a room like that before, especially not a theater room. So I really wanted to congratulate the cast and crew. I have a lot of friends involved in that production, and it was so beautiful. Jeremiah and I are actually going to see it again today because I wanted to make sure he saw it, and I definitely don't mind seeing it again. So congratulations to them. And I also want to shout out my own production. I have been working on the Albany Civic Theater's production of The Pillow Man, and we opened last night. So if you like true crime, if you like horror, dark things, dark comedies, other Martin McDonagh stories, we run for the next 3 weekends. So please come check us out at Albany Civic Theater. So let's get into my guest this week. My guest is the definition of a self-made man. My guest this week started his life in the Columbus, Ohio region, and he started with backbreaking work in warehouses and made his way through the food service and retail industry, through reception work and recruitment and HR, and now works in finance at a local theater organization. In his free time, he is an avid video gamer, a beautiful acoustic guitar player, and a dog dad of 2. And most importantly, he is my best friend, my partner of 16 years, and my husband, Jeremiah Booker. Jeremiah, thank you so much for being on Two Show Day.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I am very excited to have you here, not only because you're my husband and my best friend and I love you, but I'm always really interested to get your perspective on shows because I don't think you would describe yourself as a theater person.
No, I would describe myself as somebody who loves you and goes along with you because I love you, but I'm learning to appreciate theater more.
Yeah, so talk about that. What was your sort of relationship to theater and the arts growing up, and what is it like now?
Well, growing up, I didn't really have a lot of money in the family, so going out to see live production theater was something we never really did. We would go and see movies from time to time. We were really big into watching Lord of the Rings as it came out, Harry Potter movies based in fantasy.
Star Wars,
yep. So later on, when I even discovered musicals were a thing, because I feel like it hadn't been until maybe middle school where a lot of kids I was going to school with would be into theater, right? I discovered musicals, but I was not too drawn to them.
No. You gave me a quote yesterday that you actually, what did you say to me yesterday?
Yes. It's embarrassing to say, as I was growing up, I would always say, oh, musicals are so gay. I would never.
I mean, musicals are gay. That is a fact. But I know what you mean. The colloquial term gay, as we were growing up, was more equivalent to stupid than it was homosexual. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the irony there was completely lost. But it's funny because there was also a sense for me of I really liked music, very much so. I've always been enamored by it, and I wanted to join band, but we didn't quite have the resources available for me to do so. So I think there was a little bit of feeling apart from with music.
Yeah.
I would see sometimes our band kids would go along with the musical folks, and they would take little trips and see things. And I remember one year all the band students and all the theater kids were wearing Wicked shirts. I didn't know what Wicked was. I just knew that they were wearing something, and they were all very close.
Yes,
and that made
they had
me
like
very
this
jealous.
this clique of this thing we're going to see, and like obviously Wicked is still very successful, but like even then, like Wicked tickets aren't cheap, and show merch isn't cheap, and to have that like kind of flaunted in your face, I could totally see how that would make you feel othered. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's with the background that I have, it was already seeing, American Eagle, Abercrombie and Fitch, and all that, which was really big,
Right.
Back then, and just so it maybe that's a reason why I was kind of wanting to, quote unquote, shun the thing that was shunning me, which was yeah.
Yeah. No, that's something that we definitely like. That's a big discussion, especially where we work, right? We talk about how to make theater more accessible all the time, and how to invite people in that haven't been to the theater before, or think you have to dress or act or be a certain way to go see theater. And there are a lot of good people doing good work out there, trying to make that happen. But the more we share our experiences like this, the more we can learn from it, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is how you grew up. And then you met a girl on the internet, and eventually you got married and started living together. And all she wants to do all this time is see and talk about and participate in theater.
Yeah.
So how's that going for you?
It's going really well now. And I will say I would say the turning point, musical really that changed things for me in the way that I had seen musicals was seeing Les Mis live was a big one.
Yes.
And also just hearing Hamilton for the first time was quite, that was very changing for me to just see like music that I would like to listen to, people that look like me on stage doing something historical. And then Les Mis is just a spectacle on its own. So
yeah, I talked about this last episode with Hannah, but seeing the Les Mis movie was like my big turning point, and you were with me. You saw that movie with me, which is big. But yeah, Hamilton we kind of put in this like sort of other category now. It's now in its 10th year on Broadway. It sort of goes in the category for me of like Chicago and Phantom and Wicked and like musicals like that. But we forget, even like just 10 years ago, we were both adults and like aware of its phenomenon, but it was a phenomenon. And like Hamilton changed everything. We forget about that. And the big line, its like plot line is America then told by America now. Right? Like, yeah, being able to see yourself represented on stage in a history that did not include you, and it becomes the biggest blockbuster. Like, yeah, that's so impactful for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that was another barrier to get knocked down, where it's like musicals don't contain stories of folks that look like me, which was completely false.
Right.
But seeing Hamilton, as big as it was kind of like the eye-opening that I needed. Like, oh no, there's things out there that are based around the stories of folks that look like me, and they have cast members of folks that look like me.
Yeah. So you're such a good sport. You come along with me to a lot of things. I would say 65-70% of things I go see. I always say, hey, I'm going to see this. Do you want to come? And I'm never offended if you say no. I'm always glad when you do come, but I'm fine going to things by myself. But I know a big thing for you in all art forms is storytelling, period. And I know, not obviously, that I don't know who knows you. But I would say the art form you consume the most is video games, probably. Video games or music. So talk about your journey with that and like picking out a good story in any art form.
It took a while, I would say, for video games to get to the point in storytelling where they are now.
Yeah.
But as far as my interaction with video games. They've been a pretty significant part of my life since music has been too. My mother, she used to play acoustic guitar, and she had to get rid of that when she had moved in.
Wow. I didn't know
with
that.
my father. Yeah, and she always wanted us to play music and to play guitar. So they bought me a guitar around, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old.
Wow.
Completely awful at it. It was an electric guitar with no book really, so it was a great gift, and it took some getting used to trying to play it. But then as I got older and appreciated that form more, I stuck with it. With guitar, that never really... I would strum on the electric and not really know what I was doing all too well. It wasn't until I was a little bit into high school when I got an acoustic guitar. It was a 3/4 model, which means it's 3/4 the size of a regular guitar would be. The frets are all different sizes, so it translates into playing a lot different than a full-scale guitar would. But either way, that's where I learned on it. Eventually got the full size, and it really got me through some hard times playing music. It was a really spiritual thing for me to just be able to create something out of seemingly nothing. You play a bunch of different strings of notes together, and it creates something. And when I was first starting to play guitar, I saw it a lot like a storytelling. You would have your rising sounds would be something like a G chord, and then from G, if you wanted to do like a little bit more of a like an undertone or something where the melody goes down a little bit, it would be an A minor to a brighter side of F, and then you round it out with C. It's just, for me, that's the storytelling itself is the chord progression. Video games, I've been around for a long time too. My dad's always been really big into them. And I think it was just the fact of, I still want to play these games, so I'm going to have my kids play with me. So it was a lot of stuff like, a lot of kids I grew up with, like Super Mario and all that kind of stuff, but it was very much fighting games.
Oh, yeah. This isn't a fighting game, but I definitely remember my dad playing Grand Theft Auto on the PC and my brother watching, and then my brother had nightmares because he was watching my dad play Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah. I can very much relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just seeing all these crazy acts of violence you're not used to seeing.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I can totally relate. I still remember to this day there was this samurai game that my dad was playing called Onimusha. And it's a samurai guy that's slicing up demons and etc. And I had nightmares for like a week because of it. So yeah, I can relate. It was inside while playing video games though, where I also had an appreciation of music, where that started to grow a little bit. I realized how much music really contributed towards the action that was happening. And it wasn't, which game was it? I would say it was probably Metal Gear Solid, which I was way too young to be playing. But it's made by a well-known, video game director and visionary, Hideo Kojima. He's always pushing the limits on what video games can do in the industry. And he wanted this big, overarching, cinematic soundtrack for the game. And something as simple as just getting caught by an enemy would have this really grand scale. It sounds like it's from an action movie, like Die Hard or something. And I always remember, just the action of that, all that felt so exciting to be young. So as I grew up, there was another series when I got a little bit older and got more into role-playing games, fantasy, since daydreaming was another good way to get out of the not so fun realities of the world sometimes. There's a game called Final Fantasy, and in that the gameplay is usually it's what it is. It's nothing too crazy, but the music can be quite beautiful sometimes. You've got the melodic, fast-paced battle music. You've got the very dramatic boss music, but then you have those quiet moment musics when it's just all of the characters of the story either having a tender moment together or just resting during the journey, kind of. And that's when I listened to that music while I was playing those games, I had that sense of tranquility too. And you're able to take that away from just the game itself. So I find when I have moments of tranquility, or where I'm seeking moments of tranquility, that some of that music from those games is just, it's very calming, and it almost puts me back to a spot where I was in the middle of this story where everything could be kind of chaotic and crazy, but there's that quiet pocket of calm and rest.
Yeah. Especially, like, music is so impactful, and especially with Final Fantasy, like, that music has kind of taken on a life of its own, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you and I have been to a handful of these. The tour series is called Distant Worlds, where they have a touring orchestra that just goes around and plays music, and, like, we've seen them at Carnegie Hall, and they play all these enormous concert venues that are just sold out and full of people that are, you know, dressed up like the characters from the game, and or some people who are just there to enjoy the music itself, because you totally can. Even, I mean, you know, I know things about video games through you, but I generally don't play them myself, and so I don't know anything about Final Fantasy, but I can definitely just be there and close my eyes and enjoy how gorgeous that music is. Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And I also want to loop this back to, you know, you talked about you didn't get the chance to practice music in school or formally, but you're sitting here talking about music theory and creating something out of nothing, and it just goes to show that just like theater, like, things can be accessible in different levels, and you don't have to have a degree in something, or you don't have to go to Juilliard or whatever to make something beautiful. You know, you can find it within yourself. Yeah. And I see that in you all the time. And you always say, you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just fooling around. But it's like, you've played some of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, just fiddling around on your guitar.
Well,
so.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. So there's a particular video game that you just played recently that I know you wanted to discuss. You said is probably one of your favorite games ever.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk
with
about
just
that.
how it felt very topical.
Yeah.
So it released right around the time that the election was winding down in
What's
November.
it called?
Yeah, that's right. It's called Metaphor.
Metaphor
Re Fantasio. And it's really made me think and contextualize how much fantasy in general has impacted my life.
Yeah.
Fantasy being multiple senses of the word. So it's, of course, the Dungeons and Dragons, the Lord of the Rings, and all of that, but it's also believing in an idea that's fictional, yet can reflect some parts of our own reality that we're in. So not to go too much down a tangent, but it's another JRPG, similar to what Final Fantasy is.
Yes. That stands for Japanese role-playing game,
yes.
For those that don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, this is going to be turn me into a gaming podcast.
No, that's okay. Jeremiah had a really good note for me on my last podcast. He said, people that don't live in the area might not know what SLOC is. And I was like, that's a good point. I should spell out my acronyms. So we'll try to keep each other in check here. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yeah, not to go too much on a tangent, but it brought me back to the fantasy. And I remember really, really, really being into Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter growing up, in Star Wars as well. There's a common thread there where somebody that comes from what could be nothing, or you're lower on the totem pole. Harry Potter is a poor boy and very mistreated. Frodo is a hobbit, and he's, just this little guy that's burdened with the most dangerous object in the entire world, and it's up to him to get to the most dangerous part of the world to destroy it. So just those little things really contextualize a lot to me, and I realized how much I appreciated them, I suppose. And like those, the Metaphor game, it has bits and pieces that reflect our own world in a way. So in Lord of the Rings, there's a bit with dwarves and elves not liking each other at all. There's a lot of what is essentially, in my eyes, a racial intolerance. I know, if anybody's a Tolkien fan out there, I do apologize. But I really see that intolerance of somebody that's different when I watch that. In the case of Metaphor, there's all these different beings that exist in the world. Yeah. So instead of race being the idea that divides us as humans in our world here, they have what they call as tribes. And you have physical attributes that make you different from others. So you have horns on your head, or you have wings on your back, or you're a bat-like creature.
Right.
it's later discovered in that game that they're all humans and they all come from humanity. Hopefully I'm not spoiling too much. But seeing that reflected where the world isn't a perfect world and the game recognizes that. It talks about anxiety and so much. I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole on it, but...
that's what we're here to do, man.
Yeah,
we're here to talk about what we love, yeah.
Yeah, just the way that a form of fiction is able to make such great, profound statements on the living condition of what being human is.
Yeah.
And acknowledging the anxiety that you have and still deciding to face it. In a video game is quite something to experience, especially with given the climate that we're in right now politically. I don't want to go down that too far either. Lots of unsteady feelings I have sometimes, but just all these different forms of media that I'm able to consume, where it's just telling myself it will be okay. Trust in others, trust in the connection that you have with people, and we'll make it through it together.
Yeah, it's so amazing that you can get that kind of... Like, video games themselves have gone so far from, like, the early days of Asteroids and Pac-Man to, like, probably what most people think of video games, which is, like, Super Mario or Call of Duty or Madden or those kinds of games. And then maybe you can speak on this more than I can, but I feel like games like The Last of Us were kind of a turning point. Like, The Last of Us was such a huge deal. And from what I understand, that's mostly storytelling. And there's some gameplay where you shoot zombies or whatever. But, like, especially since, and, you know, it translated so well into a series with no gameplay that I feel like from there, other games were like, oh, we can do the same kind of thing. We can focus on storytelling more than the way you mash the buttons.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's something that I've always appreciated about the Japanese role-playing games as a whole, is that the gameplay almost never changes. It's always the same kind of combat and the same loop of gameplay, but the focus is always on the story.
Yeah.
And it's always a really good one, I find, with those.
Yeah. Does that make you more likely to play those games that you, like, don't have to really relearn the controls over and over again? You kind of know what you're getting into with that aspect, but it's the story itself that makes you want to spend time with it?
Yeah. It really helps with just knowing that it's going to be a new world with new characters and there's a big bad guy at the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, just knowing that there's going to be a familiarity with the controls really, really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to start playing story-forward video games, what's like your starter pack? What would you recommend people start with? Because I know, at least, again, for me, when I'm sitting on the couch and you're playing a JRPG, there are like 1,000 things that come up on the screen, and I'm like, I don't know what to look at. So do you have, like, this is the baby step, and then I would go to this?
I would say if you're explicitly looking for storytelling, The Witcher 3 I would definitely recommend. It's the third game in a series, but just the writing and the characters it's I would say masterclass. There's a villain in it. I won't say too much, where they feel like an actual person. It's quite remarkable how effective their writing was in that. The Last of Us, of course, can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Uncharted, another one from Naughty Dog. Very story focused first, but then after the fact, it's just an action kind of shooty game. It's kind of like a younger Indiana Jones kind of thing.
Yeah. All of these also have TV and movie adaptations if you're interested in the story, but don't have the equipment or don't feel like mashing buttons. So that, again, goes to speak on, of varying levels of success, I think, those shows have done. I've only consumed one of them, but this goes to, video game movies used to be shit.
Oh, yes.
Right? Let's talk the Assassin's Creed movie. We'll talk the first Super Mario Brothers movie, which is, like, kind of camp, if you think about it. And, like, I kind of don't remember the cartoon one that just came out, but it kind of takes some beats from the first Super Mario Brothers game. But, like, they used to be so terrible. And now I think that as a culture, we've embraced more of this mini-series we like a mini series a little bit more, or a short run TV show with the introduction of streaming services, they can be like, okay, let's slow down. Let's tell this over several hours rather than trying to cram it into 90 minutes. Yeah. And in the case of The Last of Us, you can expand on it way more too and have these stories of other people, which can be the best parts of the series too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that The Last of Us show is one of the rare cases where the media that comes after the game is better than the game itself. Yeah. I say that even loving the game as much as I do.
Right.
Just that episode it was so good. Yeah.
So we're talking, of course, about the Nick Offerman episode. I don't remember what it was called. It's named after the Linda Ronstadt song that they sing in it.
Oh, Long Way.
Long Time, I think.
Long Time
yeah. Which is, beautiful. And Nick Offerman won an Emmy for it, which is very deserving. But this just all goes to show that whether it's theater or video games or music, there's story in everything. Yeah. And, like, not to go down this rabbit hole, but, like, that's truly what connects us all. Like, you go back to indigenous tribes and the tradition of oral storytelling and mythology, which we're going to get into today. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, this is the core of our existence, is story and passing stories along and being invested in this. And just, you can find it in everything. So no matter if you're a theater person or a video game person, we can all get behind a good story.
Yes, yeah. And the connection that you can get from that media too.
Exactly.
Like all my fellow nerds at those Final Fantasy shows, we mostly just play those games by ourselves. But when you all go into a building, you're all there for the same thing. You have all these different amazing experiences of what the game means to you, what the music means to you. I think the same thing with musical theater too. Yeah.
So to wrap up this section, I'm going to ask you to tell a very short story about when we went to go see Hamilton. And the usher made a comment to you. Oh, yeah. Because I think that's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember when we were going to see Hamilton, I didn't, for whatever reason, have a nicer shirt with me. So I had a gaming shirt that my sister gave me, which featured one of the lovable animals from Final Fantasy, called a chocobo. It's a giant chicken.
It's a giant chicken. For those of us non-gamers, think like Big Bird, almost. He's got big legs. Mm-hmm. He's got big bird body. Less like human-like than Big Bird, but that kind of shape. Yeah,
he's Big Bird-esque.
He is Big Bird-esque for sure. Yeah.
It was made almost like a deer crossing, but it was like a little chocobo.
Yeah, it's like a silhouette of a chocobo. Yeah.
So I was feeling pretty self-conscious about it, to be honest. I'm going to this high-scale theater to see Hamilton, which is the musical at the time.
Yeah, I think it was 2017, so it was still pretty hype that we got tickets. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very hype.
Yeah.
And one of the ushers had stopped me on the way in, and he said, "Watch out for chocobos out there. I love the shirt." And it was just so sweet.
Yeah.
It's a great way to be welcomed into a theater where I had a lot of feelings that maybe I don't belong here.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell people that you like their shirt, because that means a lot sometimes.
It sure does.
Yeah. Well, this is my podcast, so I'm going to make you talk about theater now. Mm-hmm. We're moving into the 2-show day portion of the show. Jeremiah, what is your show today?
My show today is Hadestown.
Woo! Hadestown. Give us the details. Who wrote it? Who directed it? What's that about?
The writer is Anais Mitchell, I believe her name is. Directed by Rachel Chavkin.
That's right.
It's the story of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yes. So Hadestown has I'm going to jump in here if you don't mind. It has a pretty storied production history. It moved all around before it was premiered on Broadway. I believe the first professional production of it. Well, Anais Mitchell did like workshops, and I think there's a concept album just by herself before she took it to the stage. And I actually think the first stage production was in Edmonton, of all places. It was at the Citadel Theatre. And I know this because the Citadel sometimes does partner productions with the Royal Manitoba Theatre Centre, which is from my hometown, and we've been there. So started at the Citadel, and then it went to London, and it was in the West End first, and then it came to Broadway, I think. So its premiere date is, I think it actually started maybe close to 10 years before it made it to Broadway in 2018 or 19. I think it was the 2019 season. But yeah, so tell us about the story beats. It's based on Greek mythology.
Yeah, so it's based on Greek mythology. It follows the tale of Orpheus, and he's a poor boy who has a gift to give, and he sees the world for the way it could be.
I see why you like this musical.
Yes.
Just from what we've been saying the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, so he meets Eurydice, and is completely enthralled already. She is his muse, and he's wanting to write a song. I believe he's wanting to write the song before he meets Eurydice, but she is his muse that helps him in that writing process even more so. He wants to write a song to fix the world. Yeah. They're stuck in a very long, very cold winter. And so he wants to woo her. Misfortune follows. Yeah. Which leads to Eurydice going to Hadestown. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Orpheus, correct me if I'm wrong, Orpheus wants to write the song to bring the world back into balance. And it's imbalanced because of the relationship between Hades, the king of the underworld, and his wife, Persephone. And they're the ones in mythology that keep the seasons flowing. Persephone is, kind of the goddess of the seasons. So she spends 6 months in the underworld with Hades, in Hadestown, and that's when it's winter. And then when she goes up to the human world, then it's summer. So basically it's either too damn hot or it's too damn cold right now. There's no spring, there's no fall. So that's why Orpheus wants to write this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it's about these two couples, basically, and what you do for love.
Yeah. Another thing that really resonates with me in that story is finding hope within despair, and knowing, I've always really been into mythology, so I knew the story going into it. And the musical does a great job of telling you right up front that it's a tragedy, it's a sad tale. Yeah. But in doing so, that first track, forgive me, I can't remember the name of.
What the hell is the name of the first song? Bow, 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 bow. I could sing it right now. I'm looking it up. Road to Hell.
Yeah. Yeah. So Road to Hell, it's high energy. They're introducing all the characters. Yeah.
And it's like, the first song is like almost New Orleans jazz, right? The trombone is heavy. And it's a lot of like folk music throughout. Yep. It's not necessarily like Bourbon Street the whole time, but there are some songs where that trombone gets to wail, and it's pretty cool. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's tinges of that, the Louisiana sound throughout. Yeah. Easily, like almost all of the, whether it's the Louisiana kind of folk or the jazz. Like you mentioned.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that it starts with, it's a sad song, and we're going to tell it anyway. We're going to sing it again. Yeah. That also goes to show that, sad stories, we have to tell them, and we also have to live through our own sad stories, right? Like, just because something is sad or uncomfortable, that doesn't mean it's not worth feeling. Because this is a beautiful piece of art. Oh, yeah. And there are high moments and low moments throughout, but, I mean, obviously it's a giant success, and you've seen it 3 times. I've seen it 5 times, and we were doing this recently. I can count on, I think, 6 fingers the amount of shows you've seen more than once. Yeah. I'll go see anything any amount of times, except for Cats. Once was enough. But that goes to show. And it's like, it's kind of a contained show. The set changes, but not very much. The band is on stage the whole time. The workers' chorus are like it's not like with another ensemble, how you're like just pretending that, how do I describe this? Another, for a big Broadway show ensemble, you're like, oh yeah, they're different people when they come in and out. It's like, no, the workers' chorus are like, you always know that they are the same workers. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they even identify them as the chorus while they're doing their introductions.
Yes. Yeah, that's another thing that is in common with both of our shows today, is the first song introduces all the characters.
Oh.
Yeah. We'll get to my show soon. But tell me about your personal connection with Hadestown.
My personal one is it's the story of a poor boy with a gift that he wants to give. I'm not saying that I have a gift.
You do have a gift. But...
Thank you for saying that. But just that relentless optimism that he has.
Yeah. It's
so endearing to me. There's the other song where Andre de Shields is talking about just how treacherous the road to Hadestown is. Mm-hmm. This is Wait for Me, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Before you, yep. Mm-hmm.
And they're listing out all of these like treacherous challenges and the crazy things he'll have to just surmount with and deal with. And he just says, "Wait for me, I'm coming too." It's just, it's very endearing to just hear and see so much optimism.
Yeah.
Where things are so bleak as they are. It's really what gives me that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the musical.
Yeah. We won't give away major spoilers, but I will say the last 5 minutes, being in a theater for the last 5 minutes of Hadestown are like my favorite 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The audience reacts the same way every time, and it's just great. I don't know if you have the same feeling about that, but I love it.
It is. I was going to say one of my favorite parts are, it's the first 15 minutes and the last 15 minutes are my favorite. There's the, hearing and seeing Andre de Shields with that. He has such a presence on stage.
Yes.
And the way he describes how it's a tragedy. He's like, to know how the story's going to end and tell it again anyway.
Yeah.
Thinking this time it'll be different.
Yeah.
It hits me in the heart every time I hear it.
Yeah.
And when he's saying, "Can you hear it? Can you feel it?" It's very impactful.
Yeah, we were lucky enough, Jeremiah and I, to see the original Broadway cast, which we had tickets for it on my birthday in 2020, and that whole trip got canceled. But because of that, the original cast stayed on longer. So when we first moved to New York, we had the opportunity to go and see them, and we did. And yeah, it was really great for me. Seeing Patrick Page was also really cool as Hades. We've seen it since, obviously, and other Hades just can't hit those notes like he can. There's nobody that does it like Patrick Page. But Andre de Shields was that's like a bragging moment that you got to see Andre de Shields. Like, he is such a legend, and he just walks out and has this presence like nothing else. I'm going to tell the story about the top of the show. So at the top of the show, it's kind of a very casual opening. You kind of don't know what's happening. The workers come out, and then Hermes, who's the Andre de Shields character, he plays Hermes, he comes out, and there's no music, it's quiet, and he just kind of looks around at everybody, and he starts with, he's wearing this silver suit, and he has a button on his suit, and he has his hand on his button, and somebody's GD phone starts going off. And it would not stop going off. It was it felt like 4 minutes. I'm sure it was 15 seconds. But he just stood there with his hand on his button. And he just waited. He didn't make a comment. He wasn't sassy about it. He just waited. And then the phone went off. And then he opened his jacket and he flipped it open and he has a shiny vest underneath. And he did the reveal. And then the show starts with, he asks the chorus. He says, "All right." And they say, "All right." And then he asks the audience, "All right? All right." And it was all right, let's go.
Yeah.
That was just the greatest opening. He was like, no, I'm going to wait. It's going to be better if we just wait. I'm not going to fight through this. And it was just oh yeah, the audience, he had him.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why listen, I know everybody can't afford Broadway tickets, but sometimes you got to go. You got to go see those guys. Nobody else is doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody else is saying, no, it's going to be better if we're all on this train together.
Well, in that, just the vocal range that Patrick Page has to go that low.
Yeah.
And just how relevant The Wall is these days.
Yes, which was written pre-current president.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Patrick Page has been with had been with the show the whole time. So that part is written for him. So another Hades, they modify it if you can't sing that low, because I truly can't think of another, maybe in the opera world, but no one on Broadway can sing as low as Patrick Page. Yeah. And it just brings this gravitas to Hades, which is, Hades like a slick businessman.
Yeah.
But he also has this tattoo of the brick wall, and, they work for work's sake down there. And it's like, you're just in the machine. You are building the wall so that you have a job. You're building the wall to nowhere. Like, we all had work days like that, where it's like, I'm just putting bricks on bricks on bricks, Yeah. So, if somebody doesn't know anything about Hadestown and would like to get into it, how do you recommend they do that? Jeremiah's making a face at me. So there are a couple of Hadestown cast recordings. I believe there's the original Broadway cast, and then there's a live cast recording you can listen to. And you may actually not know this, but the original Broadway cast is reuniting in the West End right now, and they are making a pro shot of Hadestown. So if you are patient, you'll be able to view it in a movie theater in the comfort of your own home very soon. But it's on Broadway, it's in the West End, it's on tour. It's pretty accessible, I think, if you are a regular theater goer, if you're in those areas. So if you're ever wondering about it, it's well worth your time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So my show this week is a companion piece to Hadestown. My show was written across the board, book, music, and lyrics by Dave Malloy, was directed by Rachel Chavkin, as Hadestown was, and my musical is Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. Another musical we saw together. Premiere date, it premiered in 2016 on Broadway, but had been in development since, or probably before this, but its first professional performances were in 2012, and then it had a 2013 off-Broadway production, and it just had a new production in London in 2024, which kind of reinvented the way it looked, and I really wish I could have seen that. It was cool. Notable cast members include Josh Groban, Philippa Sue, Danae Benton, Amber Gray, Grace McLean. There are off-Broadway and Broadway cast recordings. There aren't any professional recordings of it yet, unfortunately, but if you know your slime tutorials, you can go see it for sure. So this story is based off of a 70-page slice of War and Peace. I have never read War and Peace. I probably will never read War and Peace. So that's to say you don't have to understand any of that to get into it. So like Hadestown, it starts with introducing all of the characters and how they're connected to each other. The musical starts in 1812 Moscow, Russia, by introducing the characters. Okay, I needed to know all the characters. Okay, so our main players are Natasha, who is a young girl. She is engaged to a man named Andre. Andre is off fighting the war, so we don't really see Andre that much. There's Pierre, who is he's happily unmarried. Hi, I'm just chiming in to say he is unhappily married, not happily unmarried. Sorry. He feels he is wasting his life. There's Natasha's cousin, Sonia. There is Pierre's wife, whose name is Helene. Another connection, Helene was played on Broadway by Amber Gray, who also played Persephone in the original Broadway cast of Hadestown.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah. There's them. There is Anatole, who is Helene's brother, Pierre's brother-in-law, and Anatole is kind of a bastard. We'll get along to that. There are a ton of other characters, but literally the first song, the prologue, is just like, this person is connected to this person, and they sum it up a whole bunch of times. And like in the book, there are like several different names. So Natasha is also Natalia, who is also Natalie, and she's referred to all of these things throughout the musical. So they try to set it up pretty good. And I actually believe in the playbill there's like a family tree of all of these people. So they recognize how confusing it is, but they do a good job of setting up, here are these characters.
I do remember being really confused about
yes.
who everybody was.
Right. And it like helps. We mostly follow Natasha and Pierre, who are there, and their stories don't really, like, they intertwine because they know a lot of the same people, but they don't really, I believe they don't really actually have a scene together until the end. Natasha's story is sort of, she is engaged to this man, Andre, but And he's like, he's a good stand-up guy, but he's been gone for a long time. And this is 1812, so we don't have phones. Letters are inconsistent. And he's off in the war, right? So she kind of doesn't even know if he's alive or dead for a lot of it. She is really missing him. She has this gorgeous song called No One Else. So she goes to with her cousin to the opera, and she meets Anatole, who is, as the Wikipedia reads, a notorious rogue and womanizer. So he flirts with her, and she's starting to get hot under the collar for Anatole. So she is really conflicted a lot of this time with, what do I do? Do I go with him? Do I stay faithful to Andre? And she has all of her friends, opinions coming at her. It is also revealed that Anatole actually is married to somebody else who is not in the picture. They live somewhere else, but so there's all that. I really should have read this ahead of time, but Anatole and Natasha do make plans to run away together, and I'll leave her story over there, I think. Pierre, so is unhappy in his marriage with Helene. She is, I believe the word used to describe her in the prologue is slut. So she is just kind of all over the place. She's out drinking all the time. Pierre is definitely getting into more drinking as he falls into his depression. Pierre finds himself in a duel and accidentally wounds somebody. He has this great song that they added into the Broadway production for Josh Groban called Dust and Ashes, where he sort of, he really wants to leave his marriage and find fulfillment and find love. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, which sounds like, it sounds like a shit show from what I'm describing, but I can't, people that have seen and know Great Comet get Great Comet, right? It all comes together. And I talk about this all the time, but the experience we had in the theater was, incredible, right? It was at the Imperial Theater, and they had the lobby set very, Cold War era Russia, where it was, cement and, spray paint on the walls and very, cold and industrial. And then you go into the seating of the theater itself, and it was all, red velvet and curtains and chandeliers and so decadent, and it just felt like stepping into another world, right? And at the top of the show they threw pierogies at you, which is amazing, in these little Chinese takeout containers, little pierogies, or some people got little egg shakers, or they have this number at the top bit my tongue at the top of Act 2 called Letters, where they hand out letters to the audience, and it's about correspondence between the characters, but some audience members got to go home with letters. And it was either the original production at Ars Nova or the off-Broadway production where they had carafes of vodka on the table too. So I feel like if you're going to do Great Comet, there has to be some aspect of immersion. Yeah. I don't know how this show would work as just okay, we're all going to sit down and you're going to watch this story. So maybe that's why it never toured. Sure. Because it has to have some kind of immersive element to it, and I think that's part of what makes it so special.
That's really what I remember from it, is being immersive.
Yeah.
I remember the smell of vodka lingering through the entire Act 2.
Yeah.
Which isn't a complaint by any means. It really added to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
There was a really fun dance club scene.
Yes. Yes, at the club.
We've gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think that's the part where Pierre gets into a duel. I think that's before he goes to the club. Oh, okay. And then he gets into the duel with one of Anatole's friends. Yeah. As one does. Yeah. In the club. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I will talk about the end a little bit, because I don't think it's I'm going to skip a lot of stuff. But so it's when Pierre and Natasha meet, and the song is called Pierre and Natasha, and they're both kind of not in a great place, but I'll just read this. It says, during their conversation, he expresses if he were the best man on earth and younger, and if he were free, he would gladly marry her, which gives her hope. And then after the meeting, Pierre experiences a moment of enlightenment when he watches the Great Comet of 1812 soar across the night sky. And that was a really beautiful moment with the lighting too. It kind of all these chandeliers got really, really bright, and then they just go out. Yeah. So it's a really unique musical because it's sung through, so it's kind of an opera in that sense. Not all of the lyrics rhyme with each other. Some of the lyrics are actually like verbatim from one of the translations of War and Peace. So some of it's just lifted right from that. And it's just like, I don't know, I always count it amongst, like, I'm so lucky we got to see this show. And I know there are other, immersive things that you can go and do, but it was like immersive while still being, like, we sat down in a theater and had kind of a traditional theater experience. It wasn't like, it's not like Cats where they're in your lap, or it's not like Sleep No More where you have to, like, walk through a thing and you're blindfolded and you have to do all this scary stuff. Like, they did such a good job of making it immersive while also welcoming a traditional theater crowd that wants to sit down and do that.
Yep.
Probably, I would liken it to, I haven't seen this particular production, but what Cabaret at the Kit Kat Club, which is on Broadway right now, is doing. Like, you go in and you have the different rooms and the different lounges you can do, and it's sort of in the round, the theater, the thing is in the middle, and you can sit on the stage and stuff like that. But if you just want to go to sit down and watch the story, you can totally have that experience too.
Yeah.
So it's not like, it's atypical of a theater experience, but it's not untraditional.
Yeah, I would say almost in the sense of like Here Lies Love too.
Yes.
Which
yeah.
I don't know if it's around anymore. So.
It is not. It closed less than a year on Broadway. We love Here Lies Love was fun. It was
Shout out to Fatboy Slim.
Shout out to Fatboy Slim, and of course shout out to my boy David Byrne.
Yes.
But yeah, that was the first all Filipino cast on Broadway. Which is history making, and just completely gutted the theater and turned it into a dance club. And yeah, exactly, that show, you could pick your experience. If you want to stand and be in a nightclub the whole time while they move the stage around you, you could do that. If you wanted to just sit down, you could do that too. So if you wanted to get up and dance, which I made you do, then we did. And if you wanted to sit down and be a curmudgeon, you could do that also. So yeah, that you're right. That is sort of similar experiences to those two things. So if you want to get into Natasha, Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which I suggest you do because it's wonderful, you can kind of get the whole thing from the cast recording because it is sung through, so you can get the whole story there. There are two recordings, like I mentioned. One is with the original Broadway cast, so if you're a Josh Groban fan, you can do that one. The off-Broadway cast is with the composer, Dave Malloy, as Pierre. I did also want to talk about, it's hard to talk about Great Comet without talking about the way it closed. Are you familiar with the way it closed?
I am not.
All right. So, if you haven't been able to, gather this from my rambling about it, this is kind of a weird show.
Yes.
And it doesn't sell the way Chicago or Wicked does on Broadway. It's a hard sell. I talk about shows that are a hard sell all the time. I love shows that are a hard sell. So Josh Groban opened the show, and the Groban moms come as they always do.
Yeah.
We love the Groban moms. I've seen it, we've seen Josh Groban in a couple of shows on Broadway's now. They turn out, they spend the money, they drink the wine.
They have a great time.
They have a great time. We love them.
Yeah.
They're respectful, too. They're not crazy. They're great. So Josh Groban played Pierre from October through July of that year. He's Josh Groban. He's got to go out and do other things. So the actor they replaced Josh Groban with, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong. I apologize. But it's Okorit Onadawan, who assumed the role of Pierre. His big claim to fame is he was the original Hercules Mulligan, James Madison, and Hamilton. So they were kind of riding the Hamilton hype train, casting him. So he came in, and the show starts to struggle financially. This isn't really his fault. It's a matter of the show is weird, and Josh Groban left.
Right. And
when you have a weird show with a star like that sells tickets, it can do well. But when it's like, okay, it's time for the show to be by yourself now, Okorit didn't have quite the star power. And it's a huge show, right? There's probably 30 people in this cast. Like, there's a lot of salaries you have to pay. There's a lot of bills you have to pay. And the show just wasn't financially surviving this way.
Yep.
So they announced that 2 weeks before Oakreet was supposed to end his run, that Mandy Patinkin was going to come in and play Pierre. So they were going to cut his contract by 2 weeks and bring in Mandy Patinkin as like a Hail Mary, whatever. Which would have been the greatest casting of all time. And we were still in North Dakota, Winnipeg at the time. I would have flown in to see Mandy Patinkin as Pierre.
Yeah, that would fit his vocal.
Right, and he's playing like an old man. Like, it would have been great. But, it was a delicate situation. And even though it was Mandy Patinkin and he would have been perfect for it, he's still a white man who now they're cutting a black man's contract to make room for this white man. Those are facts. So there was a big kerfuffle. Mandy Patinkin withdrew. So did Oak. And the show closed with Dave Malloy as Pierre because nobody wanted to touch it after that. So it closed on September 3rd, 2017, which is the day we got married. Wow. I actually referenced Great Comet in our wedding speech because I'm a nerd. But yeah, it was open for 11 months, and that life of the show was way too short. But it was a great comet in itself. It was bright and it burned out. But I'm really happy to see that it got life in London again, and I know it's available for licensing for professional productions, and hopefully it's available to community productions too, because it would be an incredible way to community theaters are always looking for big casts because big casts sell tickets, and it's a diverse cast. You could put anybody of any race in there. There are old people, young people, men, women. You could fill the chorus with whoever you want. It would be a great community theater show if you have voices that can sustain that long, because it's 2.5 hours sung through. Yeah. But yeah, talking about that controversy is important to the history of the show. Mindful casting is really important. So yeah, that's Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812, which is...
Yay, Natasha Pierre.
Yay! All right. Well, thank you for being here with me, Jeremiah. Do you have anything else you want to talk about or anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
It's been really, really great being here and sharing perspectives of
each
thing.
I truly, I'm not saying this because we have both our names on the same mortgage. I truly love the conversations that we have with each other. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about, whatever, have the dogs eaten? Who pooped today? What are the dogs? We talk about dog poop a lot. Yeah. And this needs to get done, and I need the car this day, and what day do you need to be at work? And all that regular things that couples and families do. But I so appreciate when we talk about, art together. Yeah. We're talking about it today, but we do this all the time, especially after we go see a movie or we go see a show or something. And I love that we can have, respectful debate with each other. And we can say, yeah, I see where you're coming from, and I see how you think that my experience was this, though. And we have room for each other and all of our opinions. And I think the world should take example from us, but you can't talk with everybody like that, right? I'm hoping to with this podcast. I want to talk with more people about that, but I love talking about art with you, and I love getting your opinion, and just thank you for being here.
Well, yes, and I'd also like to say in the same vein, I'm really proud of you for stepping outside of that comfort zone. I know you love art, and art is your comfort zone, but talking to people about different forms of art and connecting with art as a whole versus just the musical production side of it, that's really, really nice to see, and it warms my heart to see all the different forms of art being talked about.
The internet is a scary place, so it's scary to put your opinion out there, period. I won't get into my personal experience with that, but, I've been burned by putting my opinion about theater on the internet, so I'm doing this with an open heart, and I'm trying to lead with love and listening and openness and community. So you are always a part of my community. You're my best friend, and I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. Isn't Jeremiah so wonderful? I really meant what I said. I really love talking to him, and he is so beloved everywhere he goes, and he can talk to anybody about anything for so long, and he loves learning new things, and he loves passing on his knowledge to others, and I feel so privileged to have him in my life. He truly is so great. I love being in love with my husband. So that's it for this week, folks. As always, if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to our social media pages, or check out our link tree, our linktr.ee/2showday, and there you can find our social media. You can also find where to listen. You can find our email sign up. You can send me an email directly, and you can also find my Mezzanine app and see what I'm going to see in the next few weeks. Until next time, folks.
Two Show Day is created and hosted by Diana Shabai Booker. It is executive produced by Diana and is produced and edited by Michael McCord. You can contact Two Show Day at twoshow.daypodcast@gmail.com and find all our socials on Linktree at linktr.ee/2showday. Two Show Day is independently owned by Diana Shabai Booker. It is part of the Collaborative Studios network. All opinions expressed herein are not necessarily the opinions of Collaborative Studios, Proctor's Collaborative, or any of its affiliates or partners. If you're interested in becoming a part of Collaborative Studios, you can reach us at collaborativestudios@proctors.org.